Aloha and welcome to this practice WOD. It's the third one, and we've got our 3 pages, of which you can see a couple here. Now what we're going to do in this WOD is make this home page actually display contact data from a underlying database. And to do that, we're going to basically have to do 3 things. One is we're going to have to create a contacts collection being the Mongo term for kind of like a table in SQL terms. And then we're going to create some sample data so that when the application comes up, we get to see something in our table that just helps us see that everything works correctly. In order to display the data that we create upon startup, we're going to alter our home page. So 3 things to do. Not hard to do, but a little, there's some odds and ends you have to kind of keep straight in order for things to work correctly. The biggest recommendation I can give you going into this is to not edit any of the existing files, like any of the existing stuff collection files, which is what's from the Meteor application thing, and instead create new files for our contacts collection and so forth, and keep the old pages around. That's all the way until the very end of this, the creation of your application. If you try to delete the stuff things incrementally as you go on, you create a lot of extra work for yourself. So I'll show you how that works as we get into it. Okay, so we have to start the timer, which is here, and then we go to GitHub, and we're going to create a branch called homepage1. And by doing that, it switches us to it. So when we go back to IntelliJ, you can see down here in the lower right corner, we're in our homepage1 branch. So let's go back to the instructions. First thing we're going to do is create a new collection called contacts. And that is in the imports API and that's in the imports API directory. We don't have a contacts directory. So we'll have to create that directory, create the index.js, and create the contacts.js. And conveniently enough, to see how to do that, just look here. You see we got the stuff directory with an index file that imports stuff, and then our stuff.js, which has the stuff we need to do. Basically what we're going to do is kind of mimic that to create our collection. And that's how the template, it's kind of the best way to do it. So I'll do a propeller n, create a directory. We'll call this the contacts directory. And then what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to just do a propeller C, propeller V, and I'm going to copy the index.js into it. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the stuff, except I'm going to call the stuff one contacts.js. And then I'm going to go through and edit these 2 files to be what actually I need. But it solves me from having to write a lot of stuff from scratch. So I'll call this the contacts collection, and then everywhere I see a stuff, I'll have to replace by you could probably do like an editor search and replace, but for the moment I'm just going to do it this way, and I'm of course using ESLint to keep me honest here. So everything's cool. Okay. But we do have to change our schema because the actual stuff that we want is first, last, addressed, phone, and email. So let's go back and update that. So, I also said that get rid of this autoform stuff because that's a kind of a relic of, and a propeller delete gets rid of that whole thing in kind of one fell swoop and adjust the lines and everything. And in fact, we're just going to use all text fields for this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically make 4 more copies of this. 2, 3, 4, 5. And then this should be first, last, address, telephone, And I could uppercase these labels, but we're not using them for any other purpose, so it's okay to keep them lowercase. Either way is fine. Telephone, email, and then they're all strings. Now it turns out that simple schema has a lot of interesting ways to do validation, but we're not going to do that in this case. We're just going to say, you know what, all these things can be 200 characters long, and that will kind of keep us out of trouble, at least for this, this kind of prototyping thing. Okay, so we've defined our contacts, and we've got an import statement, but who's importing this import statement? Okay, so to figure that out, we can go up to main.js, and where we see main.js importing stuff, we'll just duplicate that and say, okay, in addition to stuff, import contacts. And that makes sure that our contacts collection is defined on the client, but collections are things that need to be defined in both places, on the client and the server. So we also need to go to server main.js and do the import statement there. Okay, and actually at this point, we can go back and see that our application builds correctly. It should build correctly. It's not going to do anything different if we, for example, went to this page. It'll still look exactly the same, but we haven't broken anything. And that's, hallelujah, that's a great thing. Okay, so someone's calling me. Let me quickly pause this, and I'll be right back with you. Where is my... Okay, we're back. I probably wasted a minute of that phone with a phone call. Sorry about that. But we will press on. So let's go back to Google Chrome and see what the next thing. So we've created our contacts collection. We've deleted autoform. We've imported the files where we needed to do it. And so the next thing we want to do is create sample contacts data. And that's going to be in import startup server, because that's the code that gets run on the server side when we start up, and that's the appropriate place to create our contacts data. We're not going to create it on the client side, create it on the server side, and then we're going to let the magic of Meteor propagate that data from the server off to the clients as required. Okay, so let's go back to our editor. We'll go to imports startup server, and here's the file that creates the sample stuff. So let's just copy that and paste it in and call it contacts. And now go through this in kind of in a straightforward way. Replace references to stuff with contacts. So a list of contacts to pre-fill the collection, and then we'll say contact seeds, and I'll just go through and get things to kind of be syntactically correct. Seed contacts contacts.insert. Okay, so that looks okay. The only thing that's wrong now is our contact seeds. And if we go back to our, we see we have first, last, address, telephone, email. So let's make one of those. So we'll say first, fill up. Last, someone really wants to get to me. Address 1680 East West Road, telephone 808-956-3489, and email johnson@hawaii.edu. Okay, so that's good, and then we'll duplicate that a few more times and get rid of the stuff guys. And then let's change this to be Henry Casanova. Everything, I guess we can change keep the other stuff the same for now. But we will change the email address just so. Kim Binstead, and she's Binstead, and then let's say David Chin, and he's Chin at Hawaii.edu. And then we gotta make this look good. So I do a propeller option L reformats. Just keep reminding you of this one because it's so useful. And then what is it? Oops. It wants these dangling. ESLint wants dangling commas, so we will oblige. And so that means if the context is empty, we're going to insert contacts in there. Looks okay. So now we have to actually do an import. So that this is actually run. And so now, if we go back, let's kind of let our things run and just make sure we don't get any errors. Okay, it ran, it restarted, no problems. So for now, let's assume that that means we're okay with the sample context data, the proof of the pudding. We could do some kind of console log or something, but I think what we'll do is we'll just try to display the context data in the home page. And that's the way we'll check to see whether or not it's okay. And we're going to use the list stuff pages as a guide. You'll need to create a homepage.js file, among other things. Well, what does that mean? Okay, so if you go back to imports, UI, pages, the list stuff page is really almost exactly what we need. If you look at this thing, we got a table, we got a list of stuff, and we printed all this stuff in the list. So this looks really good. It's got some other things that are nice, which is to check to make sure that the client has gotten the data. We also see that there is and we need a .js page which provides us with a helper function, stuff list, which returns all of the data in the stuff collection, which is then used right here. So we can iterate through each element of stuff in stuff list. Okay, but our home page, we have the .html, but we don't have a JS file because we never needed one before. And if we look in here, we can see we've just got the table with the data already in it. So here's how I suggest you proceed for this: is we'll copy this list stuff page, and then we're going to paste it in as homepage.js. And then inside there, and it's always really good, you're going to have errors if you don't look at your imports, because as you can see, we got to edit them. Import contacts from API contacts.js, and then this is going to be edited to be homepage. So, you know, it may seem a little tedious. It's not really. But it requires you to actually know kind of what you're doing, right, as you do this. And I like that, because you're going to learn what things mean. When you forget to do an import, you'll slowly, and I don't expect you guys to be able to do all these things flawlessly, but the process of trying, I think, is going to be very instructive, and most of the code is there written for you. You just have to kind of understand what it means and do the right thing. So that's our JS, our homepage.js. I think that looks good. Now we'll go to the HTML, and I think the right way to do this is if we go to list stuff page, let's take out everything in, well, let's take out actually everything, let's take out everything within this div, okay? Because we're not worried about making sure the user's logged in order to see this stuff as we were in the template, at least not yet. So we're going to copy all the stuff inside the div, and then we'll go to homepage.html, and we'll just paste this sucker right in there above our sample data, and then we can kind of figure out how we want to update this. So the first thing we see is that here's our header from before, and we got to just replace the sample code with that. That's good. And then we get to this iteration, and we want to say if for each contact in contacts list, I think it's called contacts list. Yeah, contacts list. And then we basically have to have first, last, address, phone, email. So we can say contact.first, contact.last, and then I'm going to duplicate these because we need address, telephone, email, address, telephone, email. And then I'm going to delete this last guy because we're not supporting editing yet. We will get there, but we're not going to be there yet. So that's what that looks like. And at this point we can delete that table because we're generating our table from the data. So let's save that out. Let's go back here and see how Meteor likes what we've done. And we're going to have a problem. I'm quite certain. Let's see how it manifests itself. We go here. We see we don't have any data. We've lost our data. It's supposed to display data, but it doesn't. Now, when things don't display, as I've said before in a prior WOD, what does that mean you should do? It means there's probably an import statement that's not been added. So let's go back to our application and think about where we added a file but forgot to update the index page, and it's that one right there. So if we expand this, we can see we have homepage.html without the homepage.js. So let's save that out. Go back to Google Chrome. Wait a little bit. And there we go. We've got our data. Okay? And we've got our new person, David Chin. That was why I added an extra guy, so just to make sure that that I would have the sample data, not the other stuff. Okay, so we've showed contacts in the home page, and we can now commit our changes to GitHub. So let's say finished contacts collection and home page update. Commit and sync home page 1. Alright, so that's done, and it says 17 minutes, but I think I spent about a minute fiddling with the phone when I did the contact, and I left the timer running. So we're going to call this 16 minutes. I think that's pretty fair for RX time, and I hope you enjoyed this, that you don't make too many mistakes as you do it. If you make mistakes, just kind of go back to master, start over again, get it so that this stuff looks reasonable, and you need to do that before you can move on to the next part of this, the next WOD, because everything's kind of building on each other at this point.